Yeah, I went to Panera. I love Panera. Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk about basically the application process for the Disney College program. So the process is like basically you send in like a normal resume. It's a simple application where you just list your previous job experience, your school, your education, stuff like that, any like community service or stuff you did, just like a normal resume that you submit, and then you get an invitation for a web-based interview, and if you pass the web-based interview you then go on to a phone interview, which can usually be about 20 to 30 minutes. That's usually about the good estimate of time. I recorded my phone interview, but I just want you guys to know that like I barely had any job experience. I never worked in high school at all. I was always going to like 15 hours a week of dance, so I didn't really have time to have a job. So I only got my first job in August of last year. I worked at Panera, so that was the job experience I had. So my resume was not very big, and I still got accepted on the first try as well. So I kind of thought the process would be a bit more intimidating, especially because I had no job experience. So I was applying this semester just to see if I could just to see how hard the application process actually was, but then I got through, and then I found out that I got accepted after my phone interview, so I didn't want to say no, so that's why I'm doing it this semester. But basically I thought that it would be much harder to get into, so considering I also had no job experience. So yeah, basically you do like the normal first step, which is to do the online application. That's pretty easy to pass. Other than that, then you'll get an email, and I got my email maybe like 45 minutes later that I had passed, and they wanted to give me a web-based interview. And the web-based interview is like every other web-based interview for anything ever, with like the stupid dots like strongly agree, strongly disagree, and everything in between, and it's so confusing. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. The web-based interview is basically just very careful reading. I don't remember it too much. I took it back in February and it's August now, so I don't remember exactly, but basically any job you apply for nowadays is gonna have the web-based interview with the tricky questions like, do you think that you're a good team member? And then you have to say, but then they ask the same question, but it's like, do you think you're not a good team member? But they word it so weird that you have to like make sure you read very carefully. So basically, read very carefully through the web-based interview. I'm sorry that I don't remember and I can't be more helpful, but it's basically just careful reading and answer as honestly as possible. I have my interview pulled up and I look like crap, so this is why we're not doing this. Before I start actually going over what I said in my interview, I looked up a bunch of tips before I even, I looked up tips before, like I scheduled my interview for like 2 weeks later, so I looked up a lot of research on how to answer the questions, what questions they might ask, how to act. They said, a lot of the places said, make sure you smile, because you can tell that if you're not smiling, and I'm not a super smiley person, so that was something I tried to really ingrain into my being for that interview, was smile. Because you smile, you need to be happy because this is Disney and you have to smile. So that, and also making sure that you remember the interviewer's name. I wrote out, and oh, I have my notebook, I can go show you that, but I wrote out in this notebook everything I needed to know, and like how I thought about some of the questions that were generically asked, and I wrote down my answer for them just in case I forgot. But yeah, I'm gonna go show you that notebook actually. Okay, so I called this my DCP cheat sheet. It's here, and then I think it goes on for like 2 more pages, and there's some drawings on them. Please ignore them. So my interview was on the 5th of February at 9:15 in the morning. So that was pretty early for me. So hence I also look like crap in the video because I'm literally in my pajamas. But that didn't matter. It didn't matter how you looked because it's a phone interview. So basically I wrote down my top interests. So I had character performer, which I didn't make it to the audition for that, so that sucks. Attractions, which is my role, that was my second choice, so I'm glad I got that. Then I had merchandise, photo pass, character attendant, and food service. And I marked down I definitely wanted to interact with people, and I made sure I said that in my interview because my experience was at Panera working as food service, so I figured that would be where they would put me, and I didn't. I hate working in food service, I really do. I like it a bit more now that I have a different job that's not at Panera, but I am so social and I love to talk to people, and I was always just shoved in the back making food, and I really just wanted to interact with people, so I made sure I mentioned that in my interview, and she was very receptive. My interviewer's name was Jennifer, so I wrote it down. right here. As soon as she told me, she said, "Hi, my name's Jennifer," and I was like, I gotta write that down. And at the end of the phone call, I said, "It was nice talking to you, Jennifer," or something like that, but I made sure I said her name. Then I wrote down some of the generic questions asked. So like, why do you want to do the program? Living away from home. I didn't actually mention the park I'd prefer, but I said Magic Kingdom or Hollywood Studios in my notebook, but I never actually asked, because apparently if you ask, they might be receptive, but like seriously, I'd be happy to work anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. Living, earning, and learning are the 3 parts of the program that they'd like you to mention. Then I wrote down like questions that are usually asked of like the specific roles. So I have like merchandise questions, photo pass questions, attractions questions. I'm just gonna start playing through my interview. I did say that I could speak French. Bonjour. I think that language test, if I do take it, I'll let you know, but apparently you don't have to be able to speak super fluently. That's not the correct word anyway. Fluent is just how fast you can speak, but you don't have to be super good. You just have to be able to understand what people want and then be able to answer their questions, like giving them directions. So I've been practicing a little bit, but I did say that I could speak like conversational French, which I took 4 years of French, and my brother's a French teacher, and my boyfriend's family all speak French too. So like, I do have the opportunities to practice. I just didn't, so I gotta get back on that. But anyway, that's the first part of my interview. I know she says, after she introduces herself to me, she says something like, "Oh, I saw that you marked down French, and would you like to take that test?" And I said, "Yeah, of course, bien sûr, I would love to take the test." So I'm just gonna play through my video a little bit and look at the questions that were asked of me.
Good, Jennifer, how are you doing?
She asked how I was doing. Obviously, I said good, as you always do. I feel like we just default into saying good when people ask us because we don't feel like delving into our problems. But anyway, I asked how she was doing in response. She said she's calling in regards to the college program and wants to know if she can ask me a few questions. I said, of course. I had like a pimple right here when I was recording it too. Disgusting.
Okay, that sounds great.
Something sounded great. I think she was just talking about asking me more questions, so. Oh, she's just asking me my college stuff. So she was asking me what year I was, what my major, which has now changed, or I'm going to change it from animation to graphic design, but whatever, this is fine. She was just verifying all that information with me at first. Oh, by the way though, I mainly did record this. I wasn't sure I was ever gonna post it. I mainly recorded it for me to watch back, because whenever you're doing an interview, I feel like you think you did everything wrong, and like sometimes I didn't know what to answer, so I felt like I paused for like 3 minutes, but it really was only a couple seconds. So I recorded it mostly for me to watch back and see if I made any mistakes, what I could improve on for next time in case I didn't get accepted. But yeah, that's basically why I recorded it. So I recommend that you do that as well, because I watched it right back instantaneously as I was done, just to see how well I did or terrible I did, and I thought I did bad, but I'm here, I got in, so. This is me saying, I can speak a little bit of French, so I should take the test. Taking the test. I said I would take it, so I guess I'm committed at this point. Oh god. Mon Dieu. My interview was about 21 minutes, according to my recording.
Yes.
She's asking me about tattoos and piercings and things like that, because you're not really allowed to have them. You're allowed to have the 2 normal ear piercings, and if you have any like extra like up here, you're not allowed to wear them. You have to take them out. Tattoos you have to cover, so if you have any that would be visible, you have to like cover them with makeup. I've heard of some people like doing like if they only have like a tiny one, like some people have the semicolon for suicide awareness or whatever. Some people just cover that up with a band-aid, or like this watch, which I'll be able to wear because it's black and neutral. You could try and slide it over top, but I would probably just cover it. I don't have any tattoos, so that's not an issue for me, and I only have the standard ear piercings, so I'm all good in that department. So that's how I answered in the question. Oh, then they also ask you about Florida or California, which one you're applying for. I was applying for Florida. Look, California would be cool too, and I've never been to Disneyland. Then they verify your starting dates and things like that. They also ask if you're planning on bringing a car. Yeah, I think I marked down that I was planning on bringing my vehicle, which I am. I'm driving it the whole way down. It's like 20 hours from Pennsylvania. It's disgusting. Oh, okay. Then they also ask about if you have experience living independently, which I go to school 3.5 hours away from home, so I'm already used to not being home, but I've been far enough away from home. This question, like, I'll be fine, I won't be homesick. So they ask you if you're gonna be homesick or things like that, because obviously you're moving pretty far away. They also ask you if you've ever had roommates before, and let me tell you, I have some crazy roommate stories. Some crazy roommate stories that just, man, sometimes they suck. Okay. So what she asked exactly was if you had issues with your roommates, how would you deal with them? And I said, well, I would probably talk to them about it first. I'm not afraid to tell people how I feel, is basically what I said. I wouldn't be rude about it, but I said basically that if there was a problem, I would talk to them about it first, and then if they didn't respond to my confrontation of them, I would then take it up with like the the HR, the RA, the resident assistant. I would take it up with them, and we had to do that my freshman year because one of our roommates was super disgusting. Like, she didn't even put her sheets on the mattress. She just slept on the mattress, and she let dishes pile up. Oh my god, it was disgusting. Oh, hi, Win. Are you gonna walk right in front of my... Okay, cool. Can you come down? Don't...
Most of the time, we could keep it at our level, and
Solving issues on your own is probably much better than involving other people.
About myself.
I also mentioned that if someone had a problem with me, I would be receptive to hearing the issues brought up, because how can I be so picky? If I'm doing something wrong, the other person should feel like they should also be able to speak to me about it, and I won't give them a hard time.
Yeah.
She said communication is key, so I feel like I said yeah a lot.
Foot in the door kind of thing.
Oh, she asked why I wanted to do the program, which I said for me, can you quit walking in front? Dude. Okay. Basically, I said that it was a foot in the door kind of a thing for me because I've always wanted to work for the Disney company, and my animation major was basically why I wanted to do that.
Keep it at our level.
I'm gonna listen to what I said again just to make sure I heard it perfectly. I could just give you guys the audio for this, but... Oh, so I schmoozed her. I was like, I picked my animation major because Disney inspired... This is all true, but Disney inspired me to do what I wanted to do, so I want to work for this company is basically what I said.
I watched as a child.
I don't know how applicable that is to people who are like business majors, but I mean, business majors, you can say Disney is such a great business. Like, I want to work for a company that has like such high ranking in the world, like you're one of the most successful companies in the world, so stuff like that. But like, I could use animation because that is what Disney does.
For this company, and I feel like this is just a really nice way for me to
foot in the door.
While I'm in school and get some experience.
Foot in the door,
company, so
basically.
I really think it'd be a nice, just foot in the door kind of thing. So I really love that.
Oh, I think she asked something like why the Disney College program, and that's whenever I brought out the living, earning, and learning, which apparently you need to touch upon because that is what the Disney College program does. So you live on the property, you earn money, and you also can take the classes. So that's basically, you incorporate into your answer somehow.
We can earn and learn at the same time because a lot of internships can be unpaid.
I mentioned that a lot of internships are often unpaid, so it's nice that this one is a paid internship.
So I think that the opposite side.
Oh, I also mentioned that I think it'd be nice to work in the parks as a cast member as opposed to working, not working, but visiting as a guest. So I wanted to see the flip side of how the park is run as opposed to being a visitor there, because I've gone 4 times and it's always a really great time. So I want to see what it's like working there too. I mentioned that.
As well, because
then I mentioned the classes. I want to take these classes. I didn't even sign up for the classes.
But you don't really take classes that semester, so you would just be...
Whoops! Okay. None of the classes really interest me. So... She's asking me about my current job or my current work experience. At the time I worked at Panera, I remember she asked me questions like, how did you make guests feel special whenever they came in? And honestly, I'd only been working since August, and I hadn't had that many chances to interact with customers because I was shoved in the back, so I had to be a little creative. I didn't lie, but I only had really one instance where I had actually been able to make sure a customer had everything that they needed. I think they had a gluten allergy, and I did something, I don't even remember now, but like I have so many more instances now that I work at my new job, which is more set up kind of like Subway, where like they see you making their food, and I actually get different roles. Like I'm a cash register, I operate the cash register, I make the sandwiches, I wrap the sandwiches. Like we all change places. At Panera I was only on sandwiches. Sometimes I moved to salads, but like I never got to interact, I never got to be on register. I never got that far. They were going to start training me, but they always needed people making sandwiches. So I have so many more instances now of like ways I made customers' day. Like we had this one lady come in, and she had anemia, I think. Anemia, she got really cold all the time, and her husband mentioned that she had this illness. So anemia, lack of blood, I don't know. She got really cold quickly, so they wanted to sit outside, so we unstacked the chairs for them because we locked the chairs at 8, so we had to go and unstack them because it was too cold in the air conditioning, so she wanted to sit outside. And then it was still a little bit too chilly, so I offered her a blanket from my car. So that's the kind of instance where I would have wished I had that experience at the time of my interview, because I would have definitely used that instead of like, oh, someone had allergies, so I made sure their food was right. Not that that's not a good thing, but I definitely think that that experience was definitely good.
I prepare and make the food, so I'm really good at multitasking.
She asked what I did at Panera, and I said I was good at multitasking because you have to make the sandwiches, but you also have to keep up with the orders and things like that.
There's sometimes a bunch of orders, so I have to make all of them.
I felt like my coworkers abandoned me like all the time. It sucked.
Multitasking is definitely a skill even though I'm not working at like the...
Okay, so I said I was good at multitasking and communicating with people. So I said that people would usually come up and ask us for things, because the way Panera works is like the cash register is over here, and then you have us in the back working on the line, and people pick up their food here. So like if we forget a baguette, or if we forget a fork, or like someone's soup is cold, which happened once, like we end up taking care of that. So that's where my communication came through with customers. People always forgot to make adjustments on the thing, so whenever it came back on the screen, I made it the way it was listed, but then they ended up saying I didn't want tomatoes. Well, it didn't say that, so I'll remake it for you. But the next question, I think she asked how I handled like rushes, because you get like the lunch rush and the dinner rush, and I said that they're kind of fun because you run out of things to do whenever no one is there. Like we would have dead spots, but I basically said I enjoyed them because it kept me busy. So if they ask you a question like that, that's how you could respond. This is the part about gluten sensitivities. I think the question was something like, how would you solve a problem without your manager, like without going to get your manager? Dude! Oh, it was like, how would you deal with an impatient customer without going to get your manager? Okay, yeah, so that was an instance of me asking a customer if I should put, because they asked for things on the side, but they had a gluten sensitivity, so I wanted to make sure that, because at Panera we put cinnamon and pecans and strawberries or apple crisps, depending what you're getting, what oatmeal you're getting. So I asked her if she wanted them all together in the side or if she wanted them separate. And she ended up wanting them separately, so I'm glad I asked her. So that was the instance I used, but I hadn't actually had a customer come up to me that was flustered before, and that was what the question was aimed at. So you don't necessarily have to have you don't necessarily have to have an experience where something horrible went wrong. You just need to be able to pull a situation that you've been in before. So I kind of used that as an instance where I didn't need to go get my manager for help. So sometimes things haven't happened to you yet. I think the next question is, how would you make a customer feel special? Because I remember her asking me after, and I was like, well, that was also my example of how I made a customer feel special.
Sorry, I was just trying to think of a particular...
That's whenever I was like, this is the part of my interview where I felt like I was taking ages to answer, because they asked me how I made a customer feel special, but the last example I used with the gluten sensitivity was what I was going to say for that too. I didn't expect two very similar questions, so I had only thought of that one instance, and I really hadn't been working that long, so I really only had that one instance, so I had to think of something. So I basically said something like, I always try to make the food really carefully, and I ask people if they're standing there, if everything looks all right, and basically that if there's anything wrong, like, could I fix it? She's so loud. one of our goals is to get the food out within 5 minutes as well. So I mentioned that, like, we're supposed to be as fast as possible. Oh yeah, okay, this did happen. It just took me a minute to think of it. So I hope you can hear me. She's being really loud. But basically, I don't make the drinks. Someone else near the drive-thru made them. So a lady was waiting for her drink. I had nothing to do. No one was ordering food. She looked kind of impatient. So I started talking to her. Like, that's how I said I just made her feel important, because I wanted her to know that we knew she was there waiting and we weren't ignoring her, is basically what I said. Why do I do this? She asked me how I felt about working in a hot climate, which I'm totally fine with because I have really dry skin. I mentioned that in the thing. I have super dry skin, so I need like humid weather to help it not, because it's cold in Pennsylvania. I mentioned how like our winters are terrible, so I put in some like casual, like, oh, how's the weather up there, you know. So I mentioned that like the climate I live in is cold and I'm used to cold, so it's nice to have a bit of a change and work in the hot. And I said, like I said, I have dry skin, so I'm really looking forward to being able to work down there actually, so it's not something that scares me. And I said if I worked in the air conditioning, that'd also be fine, so doesn't matter. She asked me about housekeeping. I didn't remember that I put down like interest in housekeeping. I didn't remember I marked interested in housekeeping, so I just kind of had to like blah 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 my way through that one. Okay, this is an attractions questions, which I had actually prepared the answer for. So the attractions questions I wrote down in my little cheat sheet were speaking in front of large groups, memorization, child too short. And that was the question I was asked. So what if a child approached you and they were too short to ride the ride? So I basically said, and I had memorized this answer before, so whenever I was doing my interview, I looked for my answer. So I made sure it was well thought out. So I basically said I would apologize and suggest a different ride that they could ride as a family. So I would be very apologetic. I would bring them up to the measuring stick just to make sure, and then I would say, oh, I'm sorry, honey, you're too small, like you're too short to ride this ride, but there's a great ride that I can point you to that you can all ride. So basically something like that. You want to send them somewhere that they can all enjoy an activity together, and then you can say something like, maybe next time you come back you'll be big enough to ride the ride. Something like that. Oh my god, my baby boy is outside on a leash. Look at him. Oh my god. Focus. Focus. Look at him. Oh my god. Ooh. Focus on me. That's my baby boy Bandit. I won't see him. We just got him. He's so cute. Oh my god. Okay, Wendy, back to the interview. Back to the interview. Okay, sorry.
Now you can ride this one.
Direct them to a different ride, basically. Direct them to a different ride. I'm so sorry you cannot ride this one.
Performer.
She asked me what role I would prefer, and I said character performer, but I can't go to the audition. So we talked about the auditions for a bit.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
My dude, what up?
I was just, because I was a bit confused, yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
So basically that part was about character performing. I said the other roles I'd be interested in. I said I'd really be interested in anything, probably except lifeguarding, because I can barely swim, is what I said. Which made her laugh. So I tried to be a bit funny too.
I didn't like I'd be a great lifeguard.
I don't think I'd be a qualified lifeguard if I can only doggy paddle, so. She was really nice. She was a great interviewer. I really enjoyed talking to her. I didn't feel very nervous at all. I mean, of course I felt nervous, but she helped by being pretty conversational.
Yeah.
Although she did keep saying like, all right, okay. Yeah. And I was like, is that bad? All right. Did I say something wrong? Apparently not.
Nuts in it. It's called...
Ah, it's like about food safety. Okay. So basically at Panera there were like some breads with nuts. So if people have nut allergies, you have to make sure that they don't get the bread with the nuts, or you have to change your gloves. So she was talking about safety concerns at work, and like if I've handled stuff like that before. So I said, people have allergies, gluten allergies, nut allergies. You have to make sure your station is clean and you change your gloves. And she basically said, yeah, safety is a huge concern. And I said, yes, of course. So that's basically how that question went.
And I would always...
Safety is a huge concern. So there's basically the list of things that you have to be able to do, like repetitive motion, standing for long periods of time, heavy lifting of objects, stuff like that. You can find lists of them online everywhere, but she basically asked if I was okay with those things, and I said, of course.
I just have one question.
Oh, she asked if I had questions for her.
Major is animation
and I asked if they'd be able to set me up with some kind of internship related to art, and basically she said no. I'd have to figure it out on my own. And I think that's about like the end of my interview when I asked that question. So she really only interviewed me for about 18 minutes maybe, and then I asked the question. I would make sure you ask a question, just because it shows more interest, but she couldn't really help me with that. Oh, and then I mentioned that food service was not my first choice just because I already have experience doing that and I like to be upfront with people. So I mentioned what I preferred, well, what I didn't prefer, I guess, and I ended up getting attractions instead. So that's definitely more hands-on with people. So I'm really happy that that consideration was looked at for me, because I definitely didn't want to be doing food service. And she said, have a nice day, and I made sure I said her name at the end, but basically that was the phone interview. So I'll go through and edit that back so it's not so painstakingly long. But yeah, basically that was how the phone interview went for me. And I definitely recommend making a little sheet with questions. You can Google them all over the place. So I didn't get asked a lot of the questions I had written down. So like I had merchandise questions, and I'm terrible at math. So I even wrote down the calculation of this so I could figure it out, because my friend who had gotten into the program before me, who goes to my school, her name's Lydia, she got the merchandise question and almost answered it wrong just because you have to do quick math, and it's just not my strong suit. So I made sure I wrote it down. But then there were just other questions I wrote down, like if item is out of stock, direct to store that might have the item. So like if a customer comes up and says, do you have this? We say, oh no, we're sorry, we're out. So like I just looked up a bunch of questions from each thing. So I have some photo pass questions. Are you comfortable operating the equipment? If a guest refuses a picture, what do you do? Were you okay working in different parks? What kind of cameras are you used to? So things like that would be questions for that. You can just Google any of these. That's basically how the interview went for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any other questions about things that happened, you can ask in the comments down below. But basically that's how my interview went. I definitely didn't think I would make it in the first time. At the very end of my interview, I made a face like, because I thought I did horrible. So record your interview, make a cheat sheet for your interview, and basically just try to be yourself. Try to answer honestly, and try to have fun while you're on the phone with the person, because they can definitely tell if you're not smiling. So yeah, that's basically what I've got. Bye guys.